My name is Josh, and I'm the product manager for the CI tools here at Central Innovation in Auckland. And today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at the CI tools. This is actually the first in what's going to be a recurring series of CI tools webinars every Thursday afternoon or morning, depending on where you are in the world. And what we're going to do is just go through some CI tools things that you might not know about, or that you might know aspects of the tools that you just haven't looked into yet, or something like that. The idea is that once we've run this first one, this is the very first session, so I'm just going to go with a couple of things that I've thought of that people might not know about, but the idea is that once we've had this one, you guys can submit some ideas for what other things you'd like to see covered in these webinars, and these will all be recorded and uploaded to my CI as well. So if there's anything that you sort of want covered for the rest of your guys in the office or something like that, we can use it for that sort of thing as well. I could go through and show certain functionality or something that you want other people in the team to learn, and then they'll be able to view that either by attending the session or by checking out the recording on my CI. So it will be recorded and will be available there by early next week. During this session today, which will be about half an hour long, if you have any questions at all, just enter those in the questions panel in your GoToWebinar thingy bob there. And when I get to the end of what I was going to show, I'll go through and check and see if there's any questions in there that we have time to answer on air. And if we do, then I'll go through them. And if we don't, then I will contact you outside of this to follow up on anything like that. So if you've got questions, because this is a kind of a catch-all CI tools everything thing, if you have questions about anything at all, just fire them through. If I know the answers and if I have time to answer them, we'll do them right now. Otherwise, I'll follow up with you later. So regardless of what it is, I will get back to you about it. And today I'm going to be working in ArchiCAD 24 as well. Pretty much all of what I'm going to be showing you also will apply in ArchiCAD 23 though. So if you're still on an older version, most of what you're going to see will still apply. So to start with, what I'm going to show you how to use is the CI Tools Doors+Windows schedule notes. Now, if you're in New Zealand or Australia, which probably most of you are, you have the CI Tools Doors+Windows tool. If you're on Select in Australia, you have it. And if you own ArchiCAD in New Zealand, you also have it. And so probably quite a lot of you are using these Doors+Windows already. And what I'm going to show you is how the schedule notes system works, which is something that works with our objects and ties into our schedule, which also you may be using as well. And it works on a kind of a database system similar to our Keynotes tool. We tried to make it as similar as possible to our Keynotes tool so that if you're familiar with that already, you'll be able to pick this up really easily because it works in a very similar way. But I'm going to go through it as if you don't know how that tool works. And if you do have any questions about this tool, or if you just think of anything about unrelated tools during this, do just send them into the questions panel, and I'll be checking that at the end. All right, so I've got a project here with a bunch of Doors+Windows in it. And what I'm going to do is first I'm going to just show you what the schedule notes does so that you can get an idea for how it's used. And then we'll go through in detail and look at how you actually work it. So at the moment, I've got some Doors+Windows here, and I have a schedule, which is showing a bunch of Doors+Windows in it. This is our Doors+Windows schedule. And you can see at the moment, the windows and doors, they all have their ID showing and the dimensions, but that's about it. And we want to add a bit more information to this. So I'm going to work with D004 here. I'm going to select it, and then I'm going to go to the CI Tools menu, Doors+Windows, and open the Schedule Notes palette. And this is how you'll do most of your working with schedule notes. There are also other ways to use it, which I'll show you later as well. But the main one is using the Schedule Notes palette. So I'm going to open that up, and this will look very familiar to Keynotes users. But you can see at the moment, I have D004 selected, and there's nothing showing up in this top section here. And there's nothing showing in the label section notes. And basically, it's just telling me that there aren't any schedule notes attached to this door. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and I'm going to select a couple of notes and I'm going to attach them to the door. Don't worry, I'll go into this in detail later. And you can see as I did those, it stacked them up in the information below this door. And now that we have that information in the door, anytime we update the schedule or if we use this same door in a different schedule, all of those notes, because they're attached to the element, will show up there as well. You can also add custom notes on the fly. Up the top here. Sorry, I can't talk and type at the same time. And that will also add in to the schedule here and will send back so that it's part of D004 as well. So that door now knows that it has these parts to it. So we can go through and we can update schedules. We can do whatever we want with this schedule, and every time we update it, these notes will be attached to it. So this is a good way to manage your notes. Depending on what you're used to using, you might just be attaching, just writing text directly onto your Door and Window schedules. And so this is a way to properly manage that. The main reason for doing that is so that you can have a database of all of your notes that can be reused across Windows and Doors. So you can see I have a database in here that I just selected the notes from. So it means that you don't have to do all the rework if you have another door that uses one of the same types of notes, which you will have a lot. And it also means that once you update your schedule, as you may know with our Door and Window schedule, when you update it, it clears the schedule and then recreates it. And so if you have any manually entered text on that, it's going to disappear. So this gets around that problem as well by inherently associating those notes with the actual elements. And so that's what I've done with this door here. And so I can go through and do that with any of my doors and windows, and those will all be associated with them as well. So that's what it does. Let me show you about how it works. So I'm just going to go back to the floor plan view. And I've got my schedule notes palette open still because it works while we're in our schedule, but it also works while we are just looking at the actual doors themselves. So if I select one of the doors, sorry, that's a window, you can see at the moment that this one doesn't have any notes in it. But if I attach some, let's attach double glazing to it. And then go back to my schedule. And I'm going to update my schedule, and we should see that note come through from that window. Yep, so you can see here's that window that I selected, and glazing, double glazing 12mm is now attached to that element. So you can go through and attach your notes in your floor plan or in your schedule. It doesn't make any difference, and those will come through to your schedule. Now, one of the other things you might have noticed is that on D004, where I attached the notes before, the notes are now gone. And that's because we didn't actually save the notes that we attached to it earlier. So I'll show you that in a little bit, but it's not a bug, it's how it's supposed to work. And we'll look at that in a second. But just coming back to this window over here, you can see still got that attached. And if I open up the Windows settings, you'll see this will always have been there, but you may not have noticed it. But at the very bottom of your window and door tools, there should be this CI Tools Schedule Notes section here. Now, if you open that out, that will also show you what was showing to us in the schedule label notes over here. So you can see this one has the one that we attached to it, and we can use this area to attach notes as well. So you can do it from the settings dialog, you can do it from the floor plan view using the palette, or you can do it from the schedule itself also using the palette. And so to do it here, you just hit the add button. It brings up that same database of notes, and then you can select the ones that you want to add, and that will add them in. You can also add custom notes on the fly here as well, just by adding them there. And once you OK that, you will now see that it's reflected in the palette, and if I were to update the schedule, those two notes would now be attached to that window. So the way that you work with the database, and this is one of the things, I would say the main thing that is useful about using schedule notes, is that you can build up your database, you can share it between all of your projects, and you don't have to rewrite anything. And so the way that it works is if you click on this button here, or from your CI Tools Doors and Windows menu, go to Schedule Notes Manager. That will bring up this Notes Manager. And this is what lets you set up your database of notes. You can use these buttons down at the bottom here to import and export schedule note databases. So if you build up a good database, you can export that schedule notes database and import it into all of your projects. And then if you make further changes to it in one of those projects, you can export it from there and then re-import it back into everything else, and just sort of let it evolve as you go in a similar way that you probably do using the Keynotes tool if you do use that tool. It just lets you create something good to start with and then improve it as you go by adding in extra things. You don't have to do that as well. So if you make a bunch of notes that are only going to be specific to this project, just keep them in this project. You don't need to re-export them to everywhere else. They all live inside the project that they're in. It's not a sort of a centralized database. It is a file that you can import and export. So whatever changes you make in this project won't affect your others unless you export them and then re-import into those others. So at the moment you can see it's categorized by accessories, finishes, glazing, and material. And the way that I've done that is just by using categories. So you can add those by pressing the new category button. And once you do, Untitled category will show up and you can select it and then give it a name here. Once you do that, you'll see the name take over. And you can see in this list that the pieces of text here with an A next to them, those are notes themselves, and the pieces of text with a gray color and a little drop-down arrow, those are categories. So name won't show up as an element that you can add. Obviously, it's a sort of a folder that contains other notes. And then you can hit the new note button to add a new note. And that places it in whichever folder you had selected when you pressed new note. If you want to reorganize any of these things, so for instance, in this one, we've got finish number 5 here under material, but it should be under finishes. Just click on it, click and hold your mouse and drag it to wherever you want it to go. So I dropped it into the finishes folder and it is now showing there, and it will automatically sort them alphabetically. Can't change the sort order, it just always is alphabetical, but it doesn't really make any difference anyway. So you can just click and drag and drop them between your various categories using that system there. So you can go through and set up your whole database here. If you have a database from, say, another application, or you've just had them written up in, say, Word or something, because you usually copy and paste them, you can go through and copy and paste them that way as well. And again, just export out your database once you're done and re-import it into your other projects so that you're ready to go and you're using this note database now, so you don't have to go back to copy pasting. So that's managing the schedule notes. And you can see that the changes that I just made are now shown in the palette. So material is now empty. The one that I shifted is now in finishes, and the new one that I just added is also showing. So I'm just going to go over to the schedule now. And you can see at the moment, this one here is still showing just the double glazing that I added. So I'm just going to update the schedule to bring that up to speed. Okay, then you can see that finishes is added into the list now because I added that back on the floor plan view. So going back to D004, this is the one I edited before. I'm going to add in accessory, finish, and let's add note as well, and we'll put in some custom text. So now that I've added those, they automatically show up in my schedule, which is what I want them to do. But I want them to stay associated with this door now. So using the palette, you can just add any notes to any doors and windows, and it will just go ahead and do it in the view that you're looking at currently, but it's not touching the actual model at this stage. All you're doing is affecting the schedule that you're looking at right now. If you want it to talk back to the model, it's this button here. You can see it's kind of an icon of like some lines of text and then being transferred into a sort of a view icon, I guess, or a model icon. And basically what it means is send these notes back to the model element. So I'm going to do that. Just click it, and it does it in less than a second. You don't really even notice that it's done anything. And now if I go back to my floor plan view and go and find D004, you can see now it knows that it has those elements. So it has gone back from the schedule into the model element. And now if I refresh the schedule, those will still be attached to it. So that kind of should give you a good idea of how the schedule notes work, how you can apply them, how you can create them and manage them, that sort of thing. Obviously, I think a lot of people aren't really using these. I'm not sure if it's just because people don't know about it or because there's no database sort of built in already. You have to build your own. And that's something that we are interested in hearing about, because we are always keen. Like when we hear from people who are already using this tool, they say that it's very useful having schedule notes, that they don't have to rewrite every time and that sort of thing. And so if the reason that you haven't used this yet is simply because there was no notes built in already, or because you didn't know it was there, or you didn't know how to work it, I would be very interested to know what people's reasons are for not using the tool, because those are things that we can improve on. So if it was just because you don't have some notes built in, we could put some default notes into the tool. If it's because you didn't know it was there, we can make it more prominent in the thing. We can talk about it in webinars like this one, that sort of thing. If you do have any feedback about the reasoning behind that, that would be great to know. And the same goes for anything in any of these webinars that we'll be running, or just with any tools in general. If you have any feedback about the tools, whether it's just, hey, I used that and it was useful, or hey, I used this and it didn't do the thing I expected it to, any feedback of any kind is very helpful to us in our future development of the tool. We base almost all of our development decisions on what our customers actually want the tools to do. So if we don't hear from you guys telling us how you want changes made or what new features you want added, we just sort of have to decide by ourselves, which generally is fine. We're relatively sensible, but it would be great to hear from you, our actual customers, on any feedback that you have about that sort of thing. Another thing is that often when we are working on major new changes to our tools, or if we're thinking about creating new tools or anything like that, one of the things that we do early on in that process is talk with our customers about A, whether you want the tool that we are discussing, and B, once we've decided what the tool is that we want to work on or the new feature that we want to bring in, how you would want it to work, how it integrates with your workflow and that sort of thing. So if you're interested in sort of participating in that process, that would also be extremely useful to know. If you can just send a question through, send an email to the support desk saying, hey, I'm interested in giving feedback, anything like that would be very helpful, because we literally base most of the decisions on what you guys tell us. So finding out that sort of thing is very useful to know. But yeah, schedule notes is one that we don't hear about a lot of on support. And I think that it's just because people don't know about it, and they may have seen it once or twice, but there was nothing built in, so they just didn't bother using it. And so I think maybe making some default schedule notes for that would be something that we could do to help you with that. But if that is or isn't the case for you, do let us know, because again, it just would be very useful to hear from you. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to fire those through now, and I'll go through and answer those. That didn't go for as long as I thought it would, but that's fine. This is the first session. Also, if you do have any questions about any other tools or what you would like covered in future sessions, that would be great if you could send those through as well. At the moment, I'm just sort of focusing on things that I'm hearing about from support, where, say, we told someone about schedule notes and they said, oh, we don't use those because we hadn't heard of them before. And so I thought, okay, well, we should show schedule notes today. But if you just want to know about certain areas of functionality or about certain tools or about certain workflows, all of that is good stuff. Otherwise, I'll just go through and pick something using roughly the same process as I did this time. But yeah, any questions that you have about that, please do send them through. You can just email them to our support desk anytime. So it's just nz.support@centralinnovation.com. Any queries at all, go to there. If it gets there and the query is not about technical support, don't worry too much about that either, because the support guys are smart and they'll just send it on to whoever it does need to go to. So even if it's even if you don't think that the question that you have is related to what we might cover here, it still would be useful to hear from you. And the worst case scenario is we just forward it on to someone else to help you with it. Okay, so we've got a question about the transformer tool, which was one of the new tools that we added in ArchiCAD 24. And saying that all of the labels and text in sections and elevations do not mirror. They should be, because I have tested that myself. Oh, okay, some mirror and some don't. All right. I would like to follow up with you after this and maybe get hold of either some screenshots or the project itself to have a look at, because that should be working, definitely. I have had several people ask me if it does do that, and I have told them that it does, because it did when I tested it, and it has when I've demoed it before. So definitely should work. If it's not working, it's either due to a bug or it's just some way an element is placed that we weren't expecting or that we weren't testing for. So yeah, I'll talk to you after this session, and we can get hold of a project file or something like that. I'll create a support ticket and get in touch with you after that. Cool, thank you. All right. Okay, we have another question. Do you use floor coverings for carpet or tiles? We don't at the moment. The two slab covering types that we have currently, is that slab? You probably already know this, otherwise you wouldn't be asking, but the two slab accessories that we have at the moment are the decking and the precast. Obviously the precast goes under the slab, the decking goes on top, but it's just decking. But yeah, that's an interesting idea. So, oops, that was the wrong button. So laying out tiles, certainly I could see why that would be useful. And carpet, I'm not really sure what you would want it to show for carpet that a surface doesn't already, I guess, other than just the fact that it has a thickness to it. But tiles certainly, as you probably know, the wall covering has that sort of brick covering type that lets you draw your bricks on. So we could do a tile one that did something similar. Yeah, it'd be good to find out a little bit more about what exactly you would want that to do. But I can definitely see that having something like that would be useful. It would also be interesting to know what other sort of floor coverings would be useful as well. Tiles is the most obvious one, because you'd like to be able to cut through and see where the individual tiles are and that sort of thing. Yeah, I think probably we could just almost expand out the decking tool to be able to do different kinds of things, so we could make it more generic rather than just decking. But yeah, that's a very interesting idea. I'll add that to our feature request database, and I might follow up with you later on after this meeting just to find out a bit more about what you'd like it to do. But yes, thank you for that. Oops, I just applied decking to my whole slab. All right, it looks like that's all for the questions. Yeah, If you do think of anything else after this session, just email it through to us, nz.support@centralinnovation.com, or if you're in Australia, I forget what the email address is. Sorry. Just email NZ support and it'll get to us. And obviously we work together with the Australian team anyway, so we can send it to whoever is most appropriate to answer it for you. But yeah, if you do have any further questions that you think of, any comments, or if you do have any ideas for future webinars or anything like that, please do let me know. And thank you very much for your time. The webinar